All right, so today's notes we're going to be talking about permutation and factorials. We are on page 4 of the red notes packet. So permutation is a math word for an ordering. So like how many different orders can we put different objects in? So let's write that. How many different orders objects can be put into? So now factorial in math uses the exclamation point. And what a factorial does is it just multiplies whatever number we have by all the numbers smaller. So multiplies a number by all numbers smaller. So what I mean by that is if we have 5 factorials, so 5 and then an exclamation point after it, we would do that mathematically. We would take the number 5 times the next smaller number, 4, times 3, times 2, times 1. We would just multiply those all together, and that would give us 5 factorial. So for this example, this would be 120. All right. So let's look at a couple examples here. So 8 teams are competing in a baseball playoff. How many different ways can the baseball teams finish the competition? So this is actually just like what we were looking at yesterday. So if we have 8 different teams, that's like we have 8 little spots here we need to fill out. And as we're starting out, there's 8 different teams that could take first place. But once we assign first place, now there's only 7 teams that could get second, 6 teams could get third, and all the way down the line. So yes, we could continue to do these problems like this, but this is the same as if we just did 8 factorial. So if you want to use the factorial button, where you can find that on your calculator is in the math menu. So hit the math button, then go over to probability. Then you should see a button with an exclamation point. So that's where we find that if you want to do that on your calculator. You could also not do that on your calculator. We could just do the regular old 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 all the way down. And either way, we are going to get 40320. So there are 40,320 different ways the baseball teams could finish. For our next problem here, if we only care about first, second, and third place, well, we would only have 3 of these little spots. So 8 of them could come in first. Then once we assign first, only 7 can come in second, 6 could come in third. Multiply those out, and we get 336. All right, so there is a formula for what we just did there with, we had 8 teams, but we only picked 3 of them, and that is this permutation formula we see in the box. So N, the letter N, is talking about how many total things we're putting in different orders. R is how many spots there are. So how many we're picking to put into the order. All right, so we've got this little formula here, n factorial on top, total on top, difference of the two numbers on the bottom. So we would do 5 factorial over 5 minus 3 factorial. So 5 factorial divided by 2 factorial. So try that on your calculator. Remember the exclamation point is in the math button over to probability. And when you do that, we should get 5 factorial divided by 2 factorial is 60. The next one, total is 4, and then we're picking 1. Well, if we just have one little spot, we're going to put 4 on it. So the next one, when you're only picking 1, the answer is always going to be however many the total is. All right, next one, 8 factorial over 8 minus 5 factorial. So 8 factorial over 3 factorial. And we get 6,720. And then last one, 12 factorial. 12 minus 7, we get 5. So 12 factorial over 5 factorial. And we get a long number here. So 3,991,680. All right, next page. So we have 6 total homework assignments, but we only have time to finish 4 of them. So we are going to pick 4. So we would write that as 6P4. And actually, let me rewrite that, because we would write the numbers a little bit smaller and the P kind of like a capital P in between them. So we could do 6 factorial, 6 minus 4, 6 factorial over 2 factorial, and we would get 360. But there is another way to do this. There is an NPR button on your calculator. So just like before, go to the math button, go over to probability, and then one of the options we see there should be NPR. So the way you have to do this, you have to type in, and I think it might be a little bit different depending on your calculator. So maybe try this a couple ways, hit the button and see what comes up. But the ones I'm used to using, you have to type the N first. So you have to type whatever your total is first, then hit the NPR button, then type in the R number. So like I said, play around with that. Yours might be a tiny bit different. And let me know if you can't figure it out. But even without using that button as a little shortcut, it isn't too bad to do these on their own. All right, just a couple more here. So in our Algebra 2 class, we are going to vote on the best dancer, best dresser, and best athlete. So let's assume our total is, let's just say 30. So we are picking 3 different things. So we are going to do 30P3. So you can either do this with the NPR button, or we could do 30 factorial over 30 minus 3 is 27 factorial. Either way, if we do the NPR button or the factorial, we are going to get 24,360 different ways we could vote for who are the best in these categories. All right. So here, instead of awarding these three, we are going to rank the top 5 dancers in the class. How many different ways can we rank those top 5 dancers? Well, we still have 30 kids in our class, we're going to say. And now instead of picking 3, we're going to rank 5 of them. So you could either do 30p5, you could use the factorial button, 30 over 30 minus 5 is 25, and we would get a pretty big number here, 17,100,720 different ways we could rank the top 5 dancers in our class. All right, just a couple more examples. So let's say we want to kind of order different letters in a word or different types of grouping of people, but we have 2 of the same kind of thing. So we have 2 of the same letter, or 2 captains from the same team is an example we'll look at. So instead of just having one number on the bottom, now we might have possibly multiple numbers on the bottom, depending on how many things are getting repeated. So an example of this we're talking about here, take for example my last name, Partial. If I wanted to mix up these letters in a different order, but still keep the same number of letters, well, I have 2 A's and 2 L's in Partial. So there are 8 total. So 8 would still go on top, but now I need to account for the fact that I have letters that are repeated. So we're going to have 2 factorial for the 2 A's times 2 factorial for the 2 L's. So if you're putting this in your calculator, let's get some parentheses on the bottom there to make sure everything gets divided right. When we type that in, we get there are 10,080 different ways you could order these 8 letters, accounting for the fact that some are repeated. Keeping that in mind, let's try 2 other words, even and California. So even, our total number of letters is 4, but we have 2 E's. So we are going to do 4 factorial divided by 2 factorial to account for those E's. So we get just 12 different ways we can change around the letters in even. California, a longer word here, we've got 10 total. We've got 2 A's and 2 I's. And yeah, that's it, that repeats. So we're going to do our 10 factorial over 2 factorial and 2 factorial. Put that in your calculator and we get there are 907,200 different ways we could organize those letters. All right, so you try these ones we've got here. Tam Vanderhyde and Carl Carlson. I will say, reminder over here, we've got 4 letters that repeat. So we are going to have 4 different things on the bottom. All right, so if you want to check the completed notes to check your work there, you can. If not, I think after these couple examples, you should have it. All right, last one here. We have a photographer who wants to take a picture of the captains from each sport, but there are multiple captains for all these different sports. And so we have to account for the repeats of the different types of captains. So how many total athletes are there? If we add up the 4, 5, 3, 4, 6, we should get 22 total captains. Yep. And then we have all these different repeats. So the total always goes on top. And then the number of each type is going to go on the bottom, just like the number of letters that were repeated went on the bottom. So our 4 hockey captains, 5 basketball, and so on. So each number of all the total of captains goes here on the bottom. So parentheses again, so when you're putting this in your calculator, and we are going to get a really big number. We are going to get like 3,764,000,000,000, and so on. So 3,764,255,000,695 and 200. Squeeze that in there. So a lot of different ways we could organize all those 22 athletes in different ways for the photo. All right, there are your notes. You got the homework with yesterday's notes, and you should just have some work time for the rest of the hour here. Good luck.